Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this very first episode of your new program, Out of the Box. Through this program, we'll try with you to break several idols that we are surrounded with. We'll try to break the idols of bigotry, stereotypes, prejudices, and stigma. While doing that, we will also try to get out together out of the boxes of false shame and also out of the box of denial. During this first episode, we will be started from the very beginning of human thought. We thought, from where should we really start? Because when we say from the beginning of human thought, there's a plethora actually of beginnings that we can start with. Where was the inception of human thought? So to make things simpler, we thought we'll start with the school of Athens. We'll start with philosophy. And as you know, the term philosophy is originally a Greek term. It's philosophia, which means love of wisdom. Some people might say it's wisdom of love too. So we'll start with the school of Athens where philosophy started. But that's not to say that there weren't a lot of great ideas given to us by the schools of ancient China, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, ancient India, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayas, etc., etc., etc. But since we're starting with the school of Athens, the very first teacher was Socrates, but the very first person to really write a book was Plato. And that's why he will be the person who will be starting off with today in this very first episode. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my partner in this program and in this episode, Fadi Solomon. Fadi, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Muhammad, and thank everybody for watching this new program that we're trying to do together. And hopefully we bring some good new ideas that we can share together and grow up together. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's definitely something we really aspire to bring people out of, and bring ourselves actually to start with, because we are ourselves in some boxes, and we're surrounded ourselves also with some idols. So we need to do the breaking together. We need everybody's collective effort in getting out of the box and in breaking the idols. So before we start the discussion, let's view together this short video that sort of summarizes some of the most important aspects of Plato's philosophy. After watching the video, we'll return back.
Influenced by his teacher and the father of philosophy, Socrates, Plato believed that the material world is nothing but a reflection and shadow of the world of forms or ideals. For Plato, the absolute ideals are truth, goodness, and beauty. The world of ideals is the supreme world, and it is the finest kind of worlds in which we once lived before we were born and came to the material world. If we take beauty, for example, we'll find that the ideal beauty, or the ideal of beauty, exists in the world of ideals. Under the world of ideals is the world of concepts. So the concept of beauty is found at a lower level than the ideal beauty in the world of ideals. Below that world still is the world of beautiful shapes or beings of humans, plants, animals, and objects. In the lowest category comes the world of shadows or drawings, where we can find a drawing of a beautiful woman. And in fact, this drawing of a beautiful woman is derived from a real beautiful woman. And the beauty of the woman is derived from the concept of beauty. And finally, the concept of beauty, in its turn, is derived from the ideal beauty in the world of ideals. According to this idea, Plato presents the allegory of the cave, in which Plato tells us to imagine that there is a group of people chained while leaning on a wall and cannot move their heads left or right since they were born. So they only see what is directly in front of them on the opposite wall. On the wall in front of them, these people see a group of shadows, and they think that these shadows are real because they do not see anything except these shadows. For example, they may see a shadow of a horse, jar, or a bird. These shadows are derived from material objects that resemble real horses, jars, and birds, that are carried by more powerful people who use the fire behind them to cast the shadow of these patterns on the wall in front of the bound people. Plato supposes that one day one of the bound men managed to escape from the chains and went out of the cave. Then he went up to the top and found the real world, and found that the cave in which they live is nothing but a micro and a very fake version of a much wider, welcoming, and a much more beautiful world. When he comes back again and tells the others in chains about the real world, most of them will disbelieve and will scold him because he's reducing the value of every gain they have in their false life, and therefore he becomes their enemy. The free man will also become the enemy of the stronger people who carry the physical models and reflect their shadows on those who are bound, as he represents a clear threat to their authority.
Dear viewers, after watching the video, which talked to us about how does Plato see life, and he talked about the theory of forms or ideals, the ideal world where everything is perfect. And then he used this theory to talk to us about the allegory of the cave, and which is, I would say, the topic of today's first episode. The cave. The cave, the mental cave, that impose upon us some misunderstandings, some misconceptions, some misperceptions. So, Fadi, how did you see this cave in your life? Were you ever a member of this cave, and what helped you, if any, to get out of the cave?
Okay, so it's an interesting concept about the cave, because the cave can be the box that we're trying to get out of it. So when I learned about what Plato said about the cave, I think that he passed through a similar experience that everyone who realizes that he was in a cave. So I think that all of us are somehow in a cave, in a certain cave. Everyone is born and is chained by the teachings that he gets from his parents, from his community, from the religion that he was born in, from many factors that creates a chain in a certain cave where he sees the world through the eyes of these factors. So I think everyone is born in a cave, including myself. And I think the 7 billion people in the world, every one of us lives in a certain cave. And some people, I'm not sure if they are lucky or not, they realize that they are chained, and what they are seeing, the world that they see, is not actually the right world that they really live in. So somehow, some people realize that they need to get out of the cave. And the process of getting out of the cave is not easy, because when you see the light, after living all your life living in the darkness, it's not easy, because you confront yourself with many ideas that you realize that they are not right, which is not easy.
So, like here, what was your cave, or when did you realize that you were in a cave? Because, the first step to any cure is for the sick person to admit that they are sick, or for someone, the first way to a solution of a problem is for you to admit that the problem really exists. So when did you realize that you are living in a cave? And then later on, what is the motivation for you to get out of the cave?
Okay, so it's an interesting story, because I honestly didn't intend to get out of the cave, and I'm still not sure whether I got out of the cave or I'm in a new cave that I'm living in right now, because I think that we will live and die in a cave. The best thing that we can do is to improve the cave, or maybe shed more light in it. So what happened is that we as Egyptians experienced a unique event that happened in Egypt 10 years ago. And this event is whatever people call it. Some people call it a revolution, some people call it chaos. I'm not gonna judge what it is, but in short, it showed me many things that do not match what's in my understanding. And I lived a couple of years trying to match what I have in mind with what I see around me, because this was an intense event, and many events happened from people that I was expecting from them to act in a different way, which did not happen. So I was astonished or surprised how they are acting like that, while we should be acting in a different way. And this motivated me to try to understand what's going on.
So you'd say that the uprising, so let's not call it a revolution or something else, just let's call it the uprising. So the uprising that took place on January the 5th of 2011 was like the trigger, you would say. It was like the trigger, something that sort of kindled the spark inside you, or the light inside you.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah, it's a unique event, and I would say that I was lucky to be in Egypt at that time. I hadn't moved to Canada yet, so I didn't participate by going in demonstrations, but I lived during the days of the uprising. And
so you would say you sort of had a first-hand experience with this uprising.
Yeah, and I have followed what's happening on a daily basis, and I have seen the reactions of different people, including people close to me, and I was really puzzled with the different reactions from them, and this put me in like I wanted to find out why they're doing that. So I started to read more about psychology and philosophy and many other topics that showed me that what I had in mind before is not the real world.
So what kind of principles or what kind of, values that you had in mind that were really sort of shaken, really, that were really struck to the heart by your experience with the Egyptian uprising on 2011? Like, can you give us some specific details about what kind of values or principles, that things that you held so high, you took for granted, but afterwards you started seeing them as something completely different?
I thought that the values are clear to everybody, and everybody will go with the right, with justice and fairness and all the good virtues that we have been taught before. But in fact, in real life, this did not happen. And I saw people acting in weird ways and in ways that I couldn't accept at these.
So when you say weird here, you're saying like selfish ways?
Right now I can't justify these actions, but before that, before I learned about how people act, it was something that is not
so. But you generally thought that people didn't really practice what they preach, or what?
Yeah. You can say that. Yeah. So we say things, but when hard times come, we forget what we preach and what we say that we have. That's the conflict that I had when the uprising happened. Because in happy times, you don't put any virtues in test, but the real test comes in hard times where there is fear, there is insecurity, there is too many unknowns, and in these times, you really see whether your virtues are real or not.
And you saw some, just like the allegory of the cave, when Plato described that there were some shadows. What are some of the shadows for you? Like, he said that there are like some people who carry objects and they cast their shadows on the wall in front of the people who are chained. So what are some of these, shadows, like, that you used to believe to be real? And after the uprising, you started to find, hey, these are not real at all. These are just shadows, and the truth is much bigger or much better than what we believe in. Like what?
So, as you know, in Egypt, religion takes a big part in our lives. So we were taught that being ethical is totally coupled with being religious. And this turned out to be not true by any means. It turned out to be that religion, in most of the cases, is just a cover for something that is not what it is. So I try to understand what are the factors that drive people to take any action. And I found a totally different story than what we were told before. So religion is not the driver. Actually, religion is just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not the driver for any person. In fact, it's used as an excuse to justify any action that you want to do. And this made me change the way I see things and the way I see life in general. The result of that is that I became less judgmental, less more tolerable to I tolerate differences. Before that, I would consider myself as I have the absolute truth. After that, I realized that there is no absolute truth and everyone has his own truth. And our ego makes us feel like our own truth is the absolute truth, which is not true, and which creates lots of problems in our lives and in our interactions with others.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fadi, really for shedding light on your experience here. And before I go and shed light on mine, I'd just like to take from what you just said here about the truth, the absolute truth. And there is a huge difference between a truth and the truth. So when we use an indefinite article by saying a truth, so it's one of several. But if we use the definite article, the truth, we mean it's the one and only. And this is the dilemma here that I see, like, of humanity, because I don't think anyone has, like, signed and sealed like document that says you are the sole owner of the truth. There's no divine. No one has a divine personal signature for themselves to say that you are the owner of the truth. So you may, so for instance, Fadi may have a truth. I might have a truth. I might think that my truth is the truth, but it's the truth only for me or only for him. But the problem is when you try to impose that on other people, here comes the problem. Another thing as well is that, although Fadi and I were presenting this program together, but him and I, we have our differences. Sometimes we have our minor differences, sometimes we have our major differences. And having said that, this does not lead to any kind of personal conflict between each other because we don't take it in a personal manner. Because both of us realize that our truth is our personal truth. It's not the ultimate truth. Now, if I move to talk about my own experience with the cave, I would say, like, in regular education, in my country of origin, Egypt, like I grew up there, and so in the secondary stage, you get to either choose a arts or a science section. And so to be a good student, if you're a good student with high grades, especially if you're a male, and this is also another, prejudice or like sort of stigma there, you must go to the science section, which is what happened. So going to the science section, I did not study any form of philosophy or logic or any of that sort. I did not study sociology, psychology, nothing of that. I did not study any of the humanities. And these sciences that are called the humanities, that makes us human, were looked down upon, like they're not respected. They are for the girls or for the people who are not really good in education. Before that, during my elementary school years, I studied history, geography, and so on. But history was the most, sort of humane or sort of discipline or something that I studied. And in this subject, we were always taught that there are the good guys and the bad guys in every stage of history. And guess who are the good guys? Us, of course. and everybody else are the bad guys. And you do not have the opportunity to do your own analysis. You're just taught this way. And when the exam comes, you just have to say what the book says or what your teacher taught you. If you beg to differ, then you're in big trouble and you're considered a bad student. So anyways, like, my journey started really during the second term of my first year in university. And it was really triggered by a question that popped into my head when I was 16 years old, when I was in high school. And I had friends, and my friends, some of them had the same religion that I had, others had a different one. And then I was always fond of multiculturalism. I originally come from the city of Alexandria. Alexandria is a port city. It's an ancient city. It's originally one of the very first cosmopolitan cities in the world. And when you walk in the streets of Alexandria, you can still see the sort of the Greco-Roman heritage. You can still see some neo-Roman style. And we had Greeks, we had Italians who lived in Egypt and specifically in Alexandria. They lived as citizens, really. They just settled there. So they left a lot of heritage there. And it's a coastal sea. It's a coastal city on the Mediterranean Sea. The other side is Europe. So I was really fond of different cultures and so on and so forth. But I thought, hey, I'm taught that my truth is the truth. But how about the other people? What if I was born in another family, of a family of one of my friends who believe in another thing, or I was born into a family that comes from a different country or a different culture altogether? What would be the case? But I just kept this question, on, let's say, the back burner until it became really my obsession as of the second term of university. So I really started to dig in and delve deeper into the crypts of human thought. So I started philosophy, religion, this and that. And to my surprise, I was really shocked to find two amazing discoveries. First and foremost, the amount of misunderstandings and misconceptions and stereotypes and perceptions that each side have about the other are incredible. They are absolutely incredible. So incredible misunderstandings from side A about side B, incredible misunderstandings by side B about side D and C, and so on and so forth. That's the first. But equally, the amount of misunderstandings that each side has about itself is equally amazing. Because, again, we are only looking at shadows. So when we're taught that so-and-so happened in history, it's what the Minister of Education book tells us. Very, very few people exert the effort to go to the primary sources and search for themselves. If you're taught about something about religion, that this is the right thing or the wrong thing to do, you're taught from a scholar. Or someone who calls himself a scholar, and then you just follow that blindly. Just put a big blindfold on your eyes, and you're hypnotized or you're sleepwalking, really. But when I started looking at the sources myself, I found, hey, that's not what the primary texts say, or at least in my point of view. So from that time on, I stopped taking anything for granted, because I found that I was surrounded with a lot of shadows. What I was seeing was not at all the reality. It was just a shadow, a mere shadow of the truth. And in many cases, just like the allegory of the cave of Plato, it's not even a shadow of the truth. It is a shadow of an imitation of the truth. So in the allegory of the cave, we see a shadow of a bird, a statue of a bird. They don't even see the shadow of a real bird. So in many cases, I was seeing a shadow of a replica or a an object, not the real thing, and not the world of forms. So this really, you know, I had to have a second look and a third and a 10th look at everything. And I finally realized that no one can ever possess the truth. And whatever truth I believe in right now is a temporary one. Because as long as I'm alive and thinking, as long as I'm alive, then I must use my head. And as long as I'm using my head, every other day I can find new discoveries that, and I should never be too arrogant, really, you know, to admit that what I'm seeing is wrong. So, you know, I took that from there and started exploring. I can't say the journey was an easy one at all, because I was always bombarded with many different points of views. I was always named. You know, there's always the stigma of like, you know, labeling you, and it's like a label of shame for life, because you want to get out of the box. And you sort of like the allegory of the cave said, you're minimizing the value of everything else that other people had. So things that people held so dearly and so highly, now you're making very little of. You're belittling these things, and you're saying that these are very ridiculous things that are out of no value. So I think this was my you know, journey with the cave. And did I get out of the cave? Yes and no. I got out of one cave, but I entered another cave, because it's a cave inside a cave inside a cave inside a cave inside a cave, a box inside a box inside a box inside a box. And I don't think I'll ever, until the last day of my life, get completely out of the biggest cave, but I'll try as much as possible to get out of as many cages as possible, cages or caves or boxes as possible, to try to break many idols, because I brought several idols of stereotype, stigma, bigotry, but also I had to get out of a very hard box, which is the box of false shame. Because in some societies, thinking is a shame. If you think, it's a shame. If you beg to differ from your ancestors, it's a shame. Well, I'm sorry, I thought it's a false shame. It's not true. And then the box of denial. It's much easier for you to deny that anything different is not right, for you to stay in your comfort zone, you know, like sleeping in your comfort zone and daydreaming. But it's so hard. You need to exert a lot of effort, really, to you know, take the blanket off and you know, take your head off the very comfortable pillow and start walking on your feet and on this long journey. So that was sort of my experience here. Now, Fadi, going here to the second part of our episode tonight, is that you know, in our cultures, people usually say that they make fun of things like philosophy, and they would tell you, are you going to philosophize it? You know, so philosophy is like a ridiculous thing. It's something of the past. It is just something for you to read in your leisure time. It's just something you can simply skim through. It's useless. It has no meat, really. It's just something that we spend for pleasure time. But in your opinion, do you think that the allegory of the cave, you know, can we implement this allegory of the cave on today's world? Do we find this allegory of the cave today, or is it just like a myth? Is it just something of, it's a Greek myth?
Well, we live the cave and the fight in the cave every day, and maybe every hour in our lives. Every time a man or a group of people find out a new thing that we didn't know before, is an invite to start a struggle in the cave. And it's a new chain that we get out of it, and a new fight between people who denies the new thing that the small group of people find out, and the majority, because usually new understandings, new discoveries are found by the minority, by people who are curious enough, or they are not satisfied enough with what they have and they want to explore more and find out more. So, in my opinion, any scientist or any philosopher who finds a new discovery in any field, or any philosopher who comes up with a new idea that might shape the world in a different way, is a man who gets out of his chain, and he starts the struggle with his community or with the world. So one of the famous stories, and I think everyone knows that, before Galileo, humanity, all people, assumed, or they believed, that the Earth is the center of the world, of the universe, and everything revolves around the Earth. But Galileo looked in his telescope and he found a different story, and this story was a chain that was broken by Galileo, and it created lots of conflicts between Galileo and his all people in his time, because it's really annoying to find out that you're not the center of the universe. When you feel that like you are in the center of the universe, it fulfills your ego. But if someone comes and tell you that your ego is based on false information, it's of course annoying, and you will fight it. So as we know, Galileo was forced to deny what he had seen. But eventually, we understood that we are in a cave that sees that the Earth is the center of the universe, and we moved on to a bigger cave, where after that another scientist or another philosopher came up with something new. One of them is Darwin, of course, who shocked the world with his theory of evolution, because it contradicts 100% with humanity's belief about how
a theory which is usually misunderstood, and it has a lot of misunderstandings, and people have a lot of misconceptions about it, because most people, I believe, know about the theory of Darwin through a second party. They don't have like first-hand experience with it. Very few people, I think, exerted the effort of really trying to find out what Darwin really said. They just heard that Darwin said so and so.
Yeah, so I'm just giving some examples on people who broke out of their chains and they moved the world from a small cave to a bigger one. And this applies to anyone who comes up with a new thing, any philosopher who thinks of the world and tries to implement a new system that governs us. So democracy is something that moved us from an old cave to a newer one. any political correctness action is one of these things. And as you can see, with any change, always there is conflict and there are people resisting that change. So this can happen on the big scale or on the world level, on the humanity level, or on the small level, on the individual level. So it happens on all levels. And we live in many caves. And the problem is the problem is now with globalization and everyone can talk to everyone. We are living in different caves, but we are talking together. That's why we are talking different languages, which makes things worse, actually. And that's what we try to tell people, that we need to better understand other caves, because we need to better understand ourselves and other people around us in order to have better discussions, better relationships. That's what I really hope for.
I can't agree more, really, Fadi. Thank you very much again for shedding light here. But I totally agree with you that people today, actually not only today, but throughout history, really, have been living in silos, I would say, like ethnic, religious, cultural silos. These silos are completely opaque, and you know, they're soundproof, so like no sound and no light passes through these silos. They live in these silos side by side, but they never hear or see each other. Or they're maybe living in an archipelago. So you have different islands, but they're very close to each other. There's a lot of proximity here. They're very close, but they're not connected. They're all disconnected islands, and they just create this very big archipelago of isolated people. And a lot of people choose to create their own ghettos, and they just stay in that ghetto. It's a self-made ghetto, and it's their comfort zone. But you know, the way I would see it again, it's like maybe let me discuss from a different perspective, because we're here in Canada, and Canada is an immigrant country, and it's you know, it's an adoptive culture and country. Many people, when they come here, they choose to make their own diaspora. Because many of them would resort to a micro copy of their country here. So they make, let's say, the Egyptian, the Chinese, the Afghani, the Russian, the Polish silo or ghetto, and they just live inside that, eating the same food, drinking the same things, watching television from their countries of origin, and they're not ready in any way to interact with the outer world. And they are, because they see a very imminent danger, and a very grave one too, by interacting with the outside world. Because if they interact with the outside world, they will realize that they have been surrounded by a lot of shadows. And a lot of the great achievements that they're so proud of are actually equal to nothing. They're just illusions. They're just myth. And so they prefer to stay there. Sometimes I might choose to, you know, break my bonds. I don't want to live all my life in bondage. I want to be free and go up, you know, out of the cave and see the real world, like one person did in the allegory of the cave. But just like the allegory of the cave, there were superior beings who would carry the material objects and cast their shadows on the wall, These people are the, you know, they are they are the superior ones. They are like the ones who supervise how things go. And the source, the major source of their power is that the other people would always live in the illusion and would keep seeing shadows. If they go outside of this silo and see the real world, those other stronger people within inside the silo will lose their grip. They have a very tight grip. Their grip will become so loose. So sometimes if I tell my people in my silo, hey, you know what? I want to go out and start talking to other people and start enjoying other cultures and other ideas and thoughts. The big people in my silo will never accept that. They will not commend it. They will oppose it. I might get scolded. They'll start calling me names. And so I might become a disbeliever. I might become a heretic. I might become a blasphemer. Or I might become a traitor for my country. So I'm always called I'm given a very scary label, whether from a religious or from a patriotic perspective. So I'm always a bad guy if I want to break out of these bonds and go out. And in my opinion, this is the real terrorism. You know, terrorism, yeah, like hurting someone physically, of course, is a barbaric act, and it's something that no one can accept. But in my opinion, it's even harder to kill someone psychologically and mentally. If you put the chains and bonds on my brain, you're killing me alive, really. You know, like I'm just living. I'm a living dead, as they say. I'm a zombie. I just become a zombie. I just breathe and eat and drink, but I have no life when I stop thinking. And I think a lot of immigrants today living in Canada and in many other countries around the world are facing this problem. Of course, we talked before about people living even in their country of origin. A lot of people living in their country of origin also live in these silos. And because they are also living in the boxes of denial and false shame. But what I really find to be, it's a real pity. It's a real pity when you leave your country of origin, leave your family, your lifetime friends, your career and so on, and then you cross thousands of miles across the ocean, believing that you came to a different world, while you did not move an inch, really. You believe that you progressed, but unfortunately, in the best scenario, you're stagnant, you did not move, but in most cases, actually, you regress. I, unfortunately, had firsthand experience with people living here in Canada who think in a much more extreme manner, in a much more backward, regressive, not progressive manner than I found in my country of origin. A lot of people have incredible, scary, amounts of bigotry. And it's a blockade. I'm not ready to accept anything other than what's here. And it's always us and them, us and them, us the good guys, others are the bad guys. Last but never least, if I'd just like you to shed some light on briefly, please, if possible, on your opinion of, because we'll maybe shed more light on this in future episodes, and we'll talk more extensively about this, but on the metaphysical or the sort of theological, I don't want to say religious, but when Plato refers to the higher world, the world of forms, how did you see that? Did you see that like it's like a religious call? How did you see that? Like the superior word when he talks about the world of forms or ideals, then under that is the world of concepts, and then under that is the world of replicas, and then finally shadows. How did you see that?
I think that Plato and Socrates believed in a different world after they die, where they're gonna experience the ideal forms. And I think the famous painting where the Socrates is taking the hemlock and Plato is sitting sad because his teacher is going to die, while Socrates is feeling confident that he's gonna go to a better life. I think this, yeah, yeah. I think this was like some kind of a religious belief. In my opinion, it's a religious belief. I cannot tell whether it's true or false, but I think it's something that motivated someone like Socrates to accept death because he has hope in a better world. I honestly haven't thought about this in my personal life because maybe I'm more more into Aristotle. I feel like Plato is more into reason, while in my opinion, we know that the way to know more and the way to acquire knowledge is by experiment and using our senses more than reason. Maybe we're different in that aspect, but I lean towards the empirical system more than the reason system. So that's how I see it. But I don't have any reflection in my personal life on that. I'm not sure about you, but to me, it's just I know how Plato and Socrates thought about things, how things will be after life. This is how I understood what they had in mind. I cannot verify that, but I tend to focus more on real life and try to see it in a better way rather than waiting for after death to understand life. So I think my goal in my life is to make the world better for me and for everybody else, and try to understand the real world that we live in a better way. This is how I see myself. But I'm not sure about other people and how you perceive that, but this is my perception about it.
Absolutely, like Socrates, then Plato, then Aristotle, like they all come from the school of like thought that was, the inception of the school was in Athens, and there is this very famous, one of the most beautiful paintings in the School of Athens that has several of these great thinkers. And so Socrates was the supreme, the first teacher, and Plato was his student, and then Aristotle in his turn was Plato's student as well. They had they agreed upon things, they differed upon things too. In my opinion, yeah, like, Plato did not really explicitly, or I would not say, he did not say in a very overt manner, say the word God. It was like more in a more, like, I would say, discreet or like subtle manner. There was a reference to a utopia, a world of ideals, which has like truth, beauty, goodness in the ideal form from which everything's derived. And it sort of makes me wonder about I think the eternal question, really, that a lot of people are thinking about, especially nowadays, is the chicken or the egg, really. which was inspired by which. Whatever your belief is, if you're religious or non-religious, or if you're an atheist, doesn't matter. But you would still hear this question, or you might sometime in your life think about it. Was like, did religion come from philosophy, or did philosophy come from religion? Or are they sort of parallel worlds that never met before, but for some reason, there are a lot of overlaps, actually. There are many things that lead to one another. And then later on, some philosophers during the Middle Ages who were really affected by Plato and Aristotle, like these were the lead instructors for thinkers in the Middle Ages, whether from the East or the West. There were some people are Aristotelian and others were Platonic in their intellect and in their discourse. But a lot of people argued actually that there can never and there should never be any conflict between philosophy or intellect and religion. And if there is a conflict, then this means that we misunderstood one of them. So we either misunderstood the meaning of philosophy or intellect, or we misunderstood religion. They sort of complement one another or supplement one another, like whatever the term might apply, really. So, but there is a clear and obvious connection between both religion and philosophy. Both are supposed to be searching for the truth, trying to find where the truth is. That's the way I see it for now. Let's stop at this point here, because definitely if we just talk deeply about this, will take hours and hours and hours, and this will definitely be one of our topics to come. We'll still be talking more about Plato. That's not all about Plato. We still have more to talk about Plato on the next episode. Then we'll be moving to talk about Aristotle, and so on and so on and so forth. At the end of today's episode, I really have to, thank Fadi for being with me tonight, and everybody, please kindly feel that this is our program. And when I say our, I don't refer to Fadi and me, Mohammed. No, it's everybody's program. It's your program. So we're really looking forward to receiving your feedback, whatever that feedback might be. But we were trying to always get out of the box and break these eyeballs. So please think with us, and thinking is never a shame. Thinking is never a shame. And when we disagree, it's a positive thing. Different is always good. Different is never, ever bad. Thank you very much again for being with us tonight. Until we meet again, take good care. Thanks again.